As I've been preparing these last many months now to bring a child into this world, I've also been thinking a lot about what kind of world I'll be introducing her to when she arrives. This line of thinking usually ends up in one of two places. Either, wow, this kid is going to be surrounded by so much love and beauty. Or, who in their right mind would bring a kid into the world at a time like this? And both of these conclusions feel true. It's true that we live in this world with this beautiful blue sky that you can see out our windows today, with sunsets that streak the sky in red and orange and even purple, and that any day now I trust that those little green shoots of spring will emerge from the ground, climbing up until they blossom into colorful flowers. It's true that there are a lot of folks in this world who are going to love this kid like crazy. It's true that every day we encounter compassion and caring from others, sometimes in ways we never would have imagined to be possible before. And at the same time, it's true that we live at a time in our country and our larger world that hatred abounds. It's true that our youth have taken to the streets because we have not been brave enough to do what needs to be done to protect them at school. It's true that our world is one in which money too often trumps human dignity. It's true that every day we encounter stories and experiences that break our hearts. The reality here is that we live in this world that is simultaneously beautiful and broken. In a world in which worry and wonder coexist, maybe in varying quantities each day. And so it is that we all grapple with the dilemma that author E.B. White writes about so frankly in the quote on your order of service today. He writes, "It's hard to know when to respond to the seductiveness of the world and when to respond to its challenge. If the world were merely seductive, that would be easy. If it were merely challenging, that would be no problem. But I arise in the morning torn between the desire to improve the world and a desire to enjoy the world. That makes it very hard to plan the day," he says. E.B. White makes light of this dilemma, saying that it makes it hard to plan the day, but I think he speaks to a deeper truth in that flip expression. The truth that it really can be hard to know how to live in a world that's simultaneously stunningly beautiful and heart-rendingly broken. Where do we put our attention? And what are the consequences of that choice? We grapple with these questions as individuals and as a congregation and as a religious movement. We only have so much time and energy, right? We only have so much attention to give. So how do we choose? I know that I feel this dilemma as an individual on a regular basis. There are times when celebration and joy seem so out of place, given the reality of our world. I have this strong memory of being 7 years old and being in the car on the way down to my grandfather's funeral. I remember I was laughing at something and thoroughly enjoying myself when suddenly I remembered that we were in the car because my grandfather had died. And I felt guilty. Should I be able to feel joy in light of that sorrow? Now, of course, in hindsight, and as not a 7-year-old, I look back on that guilt and know that I didn't need to feel it. That in fact, finding humor and joy is one of the key ways that we get through grief. And that a healthy dose of laughter can be just as healing as a healthy dose of tears. But there are times when we go too quickly to looking at the bright side. When we sweep the sorrow and tragedy of our lives and our world under the rug in an effort to stay positive. This can happen to us as individuals, but it can also happen in institutions. And when it is churches and congregations that are the cause of this excessive positivity, Rabbi Sharon Brose, who Dan read to us from, calls it religious escapism. Religious escapism is when we come to church just to feel good. It's when we use religion as a distraction from the world, from what is happening all around us. Rabbi Brose writes, religious escapism is the now dominant trend of religion as a pacifier, a diversion. This is thoughts and prayers religion, as in, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims of the hurricane while we sit on our hands, lock our doors, and shame anyone who dares to bring up increased ocean temperatures that so clearly contributed to the relentlessness of the storms. We're deeply saddened by the latest shooting, hate crime, Nazi march, natural disaster, but let's not politicize a tragedy now, she says. She goes on to say, religious escapists worship at the altar of the status quo. When Marx called religion the opium of the people, he was criticizing religion that quiets the oppressed masses. I wonder, says Rabbi Brose, what he would think of religion that quiets the privileged masses. It turns out there's more than one opioid addiction in this country, she says. This one requires no needle or prescription, just a church or synagogue membership and a willingness to use religion as a drug to escape reality. It's powerful words. I see this in religions that focus on the afterlife sometimes, on what's coming next, but also in all different types of traditions. It's an extreme that can be reached really in any religious tradition. There's the Catholic version where if you say that certain number of prayers, all is forgiven. There's the Buddhist version where you simply give all of your time to cultivating mindfulness and finding your own personal escape from suffering. And there's the UU version, where you focus only on your spiritual path, reading all the books you can on cultivating that spirituality, and yet forgetting how your path might affect others. We can find a religious escapism anywhere. In all of these examples, that religious escapism occurs when religion becomes about you, the individual, and only you, and not about a larger community or a larger world. Your religion makes you feel good, and that is all you need. I think the same could be said about the flip side of this phenomenon, right balance. So we're going to talk about both sides. When religion gets stuck in the tragedy of the world, it's just as harmful. The most obvious example of this in my mind is an overemphasis on personal sin. If you are told over and over again that this world is bad because you, the individual, are bad, or that suffering exists because you haven't cultivated yourself enough, or that the weight of the whole world is on your shoulders, it's equally harmful. And again, it happens when religion becomes about you and only you, and not a larger community or a larger world. Your religion makes you feel responsible personally for all the bad in the world, and you forget that you've got the support of a community to help you through it. Obviously, both of these extremes are religion at its worst. It is a religion that sets up savoring or saving the world as diametrically opposed to each other. And it's a religion that makes you choose one or the other. Now, since the theme of this month is balance, I know you're all just waiting for me to tell you that the solution is just that, right? Just find the balance and you'll be good. And yes, that's a piece of it. But I think it's a bit more nuanced than that, as most things are. Balance suggests that we're talking about two completely separate things, that we can put them on either side of a scale and just add a little more or remove a little bit until each side is right. Each side is the same. The thing is, I'm not convinced that the beauty and the brokenness of this world are entirely separate things. I'm not sure we can split them up and put them on either sides of a scale. So often it is in moments of tragedy that we experience the most love, isn't it? So often it is in coming together to protest the injustices of the world that we experience community and solidarity most deeply. So often it is through stories of hatred that we best learn about compassion. Yesterday, when so many of us joined our Nashua youth at the March for Our Lives, we certainly experienced that both and, didn't we? How tragic it was that we have to organize and march and protest in order to get the point across that our children are more important than guns. And yet, how beautiful it was that that gathering snaked all the way down Main Street from the Elm Street Middle School to City Hall, filling up the plaza once everyone finally got there in front of City Hall with love. How beautiful was that? The beauty and the brokenness were held together in that gathering and in the hearts of each person there. And this is why I love the ambiguity of the text in the Midrash that Dan shared with us. Is the palace burning down, or is it radiant with light? And does it even really matter which translation we use? In the story, the response is the same whether it comes from a place of worry or a place of wonder. The traveler, the one who notices, is called to be the caretaker of that palace, whether it is burning or it is radiant. It is just as we are called to be caretakers of our world, whether we notice it in any given moment to be beautiful or broken. We're called to be aware and awake to both the beauty and the brokenness, to see both and respond to all of it with our love and our care. We are called to a kind of religion in which we care for each other and know that we can count on one another and count on care from one another, both inside of these walls and beyond. Rabbi Bros concludes her explication of the story of the burning palace by asking, so, is the palace burning down or is it radiant with light? Her answer is, it's clearly both. There's a lot of fire out there today, she says, but if all we see when we look around the world is heartache, we need to rediscover the beauty. And if all we see is endless beauty, we need to be reminded that there's a lot of brokenness out there that needs fixing. This, she says, is the reason the work of faith activists matters so much today. The reason the hour calls not only for resistance, but for prophetic resistance. Because to fight this fire, we must remember to hold both wonder and indignation, appreciation and agitation. According to Rabbi Bros, the goal of the religious life is not to escape the world as it is, but to be awake to it, its bruises, its fires, its brokenness. And it's also to breathe hope, life, and love and possibility back into that broken world once we've gotten a glimpse of the wondrous, the beautiful, and the magnificent. Religion at its best holds both the beauty and the brokenness of the world and recognizes that they exist not separately, but simultaneously. The beauty is in the brokenness just as the brokenness is in the beauty. And we are caretakers of it all, just as we are caretakers of one another. So may we be awake to this world in all its fullness, in its beauty and its brokenness. And may we recognize our call to breathe hope, life, love, and possibility back into our broken world once we've gotten a glimpse of the wondrous, the beautiful, the magnificent. May it be so.